Welcome to the Extra Time Podcast, where you'll hear sports stories you might not have heard about from people you might not have heard of. Let's get into this week's show.
G'day and welcome into the Extra Time Podcast once again, and a very merry, a very happy Grand Prix weekend. It is Australian Grand Prix week in Australia. Everyone's getting down, the track is set up, and you already know I'm going to be there. So if you see me at the Oz Grand Prix at Albert Park this weekend, come say hello. I cannot wait. My boy Max Verstappen is on the cusp of breaking his own record of 10 in a row for the second time in less than a year. And on top of that, obviously a lot of other records, as he always does. He's a superstar. And for the first time in a number of years, or in my time following the sport, we've got two Aussies as well. But enough on F1. We'll get back to that later. Now, for the first time in what feels like an eternity, I've got Noah Fisher and Mark Woods joining me, Aidan Box, on the set. Boys, how you going?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Thanks, Woods, for letting me speak first. It's always good to be back, and what a week of AFL football we have to discuss, and obviously all the other sport.
Yeah, it's been regular. I mean, I've been here for a few weeks now.
Obviously,
somebody sat in the first week for this year and has been gone MIA for the rest. So it's good to actually have you in the studio with me. I thought you were avoiding me or something. So
I definitely was not avoiding you.
It's good to have you back. And I think the biggest topic we've been discussing for the last 2 weeks, and it's kind of died down now, was cricket.
Yes.
Australia, New Zealand. So, Noah, what are your thoughts on that to start off with, not being here and all that?
The Australia-New Zealand series, I think, has become a regular occurrence. I'd love to see it done every summer.
More matches too.
Definitely more matches. New
At
Zealand
least one.
play so little Test cricket. It's crazy for the talent they've got. You look at Ravindra, who I think that was his Test debut, against us, or one of his few Test matches, and wow, that's not going to say. It was an incredible advertisement for Test cricket. Both Test matches were incredible. On what looked like green seamers that played like roads, it was quite special. And I was hoping Alex Carey would get his ton in the last one, but clearly Pat Cummins doesn't like him and hit the winning runs.
Skipper's got to be the hero.
Unbelievable.
Now, obviously, cricket season is done, but I'm just going to throw your attention to the TV for a second. And can you tell us what this is all about?
Yeah, that's my local club, Mulgrave. I'm in that photo somewhere. See if you can spot me out. The Twos just won a grand final, and the coach has a tradition. No matter where you play, we played away at Old Carey Grammar, so he has a tradition. You go out to the centre of the wicket and you sing the team song, and that's when the coach was talking to us about what it means to kind of win premierships. You know, the captain of the Twos, he's played 17 seasons of cricket and only won 2 premierships at Mulgrave,
Wow.
so they are incredibly hard to win. Me, I've obviously known that, losing a grand final this year, but only 12 people played that day, and there's about 45 people in that circle.
So I know we talk mostly international cricket, but I thought I'd just highlight some local news, local stories, and the fact that, I mean, international cricket, international sport is built off the local scene. So it's always good to kind of throw back and remind yourself what the important stuff in life actually is. And I think that's a really cool moment and really cool photo.
I'm not actually sure who snapped it, to be honest, but it ends up in our group chat, and it's an unbelievable photo.
Woodsy was down there with the camera.
I wish he was.
Drive-by.
I wish I was. I wish I
I
was.
did request Woods, but he was been unavailable a lot last cricket season.
Well, commiserations to yourself, but yeah, it looks like you've had a great weekend anyway. And what a great club Mully is. I've been down there, and I myself are not from the city, so I don't have a club up here, but if I was to pick one, it'd be Mulgrave, the great place where Noah Fisher and a lot of other great fellas call home. So congratulations to the Magoos from Mully on another flag. But another competition that's wrapping up Fish is the Sheffield Shield, and we'll just touch on a little bit there. Our Vics just weren't quite good enough, and WA and Tassie will take on a match for all the honours.
yeah, Victoria had 2 chances really to, I guess, even secure hosting the final when we were playing Tasmania, and God, we got close in that match. But when you're chasing over 400, you're never really going to be able to shout and to get within, I think, 20 runs of winning that match was a sensational effort. And I mean, you play the best team, I think, who are going to win it again in WA on a good wicket at the Junction. They have players like Roccacelli and Joel Paris that got a fair bit out of the wicket. And look, you saw the emotion on Will Sutherland, who was crying after the game, and obviously it does mean a lot, which is good to see because there were some really terrible performances in those last 2 weeks. I love Pistol Pete, but he had a shocking last game. Nick Mattinson, Marcus Harris. I guess your senior players that you really want to stand up didn't when it really mattered. I guess they'll learn from that and come back again next season. But I'll tell you what, Tasmania, Bo Webster versus the firepower of WA with no Cameron Bancroft. He's been ruled out with a cycling injury. So hopefully he's okay, but he's been ruled out of the Sheffield Shield final, which does start tomorrow. So it's massive news because he's probably been the informed batsman in the Sheffield Shield despite his lack of Australian call-ups.
Yeah, he's just beasted the runs, and he's a real talent. Just cost him in 2018 being a part of that, which really probably wasn't his fault, but he's a star. But what a tournament it was. If you weren't following it, cricket.com.au put out their team of the tournament, and Cam Bancroft was at number 1 alongside his teammate Sam Whiteman, who we spoke a bit about last year. I'm not sure if it was on air or off air in the podcast, but how big of a star he was, how many runs he was just continuing to reel off over in England.
He's played 12 months of full-on cricket because he didn't even take a break. He went straight from the Sheffield Shield final, straight to Northampton, played a full season there, came back and played. So he's played a lot of cricket. I know he's not going over again this year. I think he'd probably a well-deserved break for Sam Whiteman.
And then Nathan McSweeney at 3, Charlie Wakim at 4, Ollie Davies 5. So just young talent everywhere. And this is exactly what you were talking about, Woods. At every level, it's great to have successful and passionate cricketers. And Bo Webster, the man who was player of the tournament, I think he took 26 wickets and over 900 runs, which has only been done about 4 times, is just remarkable. And, he bowls off spin as well if you want, I'm pretty sure. But got 26 wickets, bowling mediums, I think. Jimmy Pearson, who did really well, I thought. I think I'm pretty sure he was captaining Queensland. Joel Paris obviously took a fair few poles as well. Chris Tremaine and Corey, how do you say it?
Roccacelli.
Well, he was rocking it.
Noticed from that team?
And Scott Boland, was last. But I just want to highlight Roccacelli because playing a majority of your games at the Wacker, usually the spinner's not the one that takes all the wickets. So he's copping a lot of praise over in WA, and rightfully so.
Deservedly so, because normally the wickets are as hard and flat as this desk we're on. So, look, he deserves the praise, and we're potentially looking for more spin options. Obviously, Todd Murphy seems to be the second in line spinner, but who says Roccacelli can't get a trip if we go to India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, be in the squad?
Curly hair, pretty cool name. I'd like to see it.
One you can't pronounce.
That's it. But something I can pronounce and something I know all about is AFL footy. And round 1 officially was underway last week between the time we were talking to you last and right now. All that round 0 opening round stuff was behind us, and round 1 went ahead. And Woods, how'd you see it? Apart from, obviously, your Saints disaster, but I see you rocking the jacket, so that's all right.
You got to always represent, I think, even after losses. What a round. There weren't too many standout games. There were a few and some excitement. Obviously, Saints Geelong final few minutes was exciting, but top 3 for me. Honourable mentions go to Fremantle against Brisbane and Adelaide against Gold Coast.
Yeah, obviously Fremantle gave up almost a 5-goal to a 2-point head start to the Brisbane Lions and ended up winning that one by 4 goals at home.
And Adelaide were 51-22 down at 3/4 time and ended up losing only by 6 points. But I can't go past Carlton and Richmond for the game of the round. I know we spoke about last week it was Brisbane and Carlton, but Carlton back-to-back game of the round. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I was going to say this during the week, and it's a pretty heavy thing to say, having only watched them twice, so it's not a massive sample size, but are they Collingwood of 2 years ago? Have they figured out that heart and that desire to just win games when they shouldn't, when they're really close, when they're down?
They could so easily be 0-2. And it'd be a different story. It's quite crazy footy.
It's scarily similar. Very good lineup, sort of not really proven for a while, and they come out and win games against decent opposition right at the death. It screams a lot of, Collingwood of 2 years ago when they lost that prelim by a single point. And hopefully Carlton have a better fortune this year, but it's a really good tool to have, whether it's something they train or not, being able to win games by under a kick in the last minute.
Hold on, I'm just going to have to pull you up there. Did you just hope Carlton have a better fortune? Like, Are you feeling okay?
Yeah, they deserve it. I mean, you can dislike them all you want because their supporters are very over the top. But those supporters have copped a lot of pain, and they haven't seen a lot of. I remember in 2018 when they were genuinely awful. So it's happy, and there's a few players if you watch our trivias that I might not like from Carlton as much as others, but they deserve to be up there, and I really like Michael Voss. So, and it cannot be understated how big of a skill, like I said before, it is to win games against good opposition by less than a goal in the last minute. In any sport in the world, winning by a solitary score or just over in the last minute of the fourth quarter is a massive skill, and they did that against Richmond. And let me tell you, it was absolutely electric. Yes, you can talk about the umpiring, but that is exactly what that game should be every year, whether it is the actual first game of the season or not. I don't really care. You've got to have those teams at the G. There was over 80,000 there, and the game was literally anybody's from the first bounce right up to the last 30 seconds, where Richmond really did have a chance. So that was great, and I don't mind that at all to be game of the round. And the Blues prevail in that sense again. 2 game of the rounds in a row. Let's see if they can go for 3. They don't play this week. They'll have to wait till next week for that. But I just wanted to highlight as well, we talked about the Freo game. My boy Caleb Sarong, a club record 46 disposals, and he's really asserted himself as the superstar midfielder I always thought he would be.
Yeah, I got nothing to comment on that. He's pretty good.
I can't comment against that. I saw that and I thought if there was anything to do for trivia on that. However, amazing effort, 46 in any level of football, let alone the highest level, is impressive. And I'm still amazed at how Fremantle actually won that game. I remember watching it, and during the first quarter, Brisbane got off, and it was just, yep, okay, Brisbane have this. And then
it's typical Brisbane.
in the
now,
back of
isn't
my
it?
mind, I was like, hold on, this basically feels like I'm watching a repeat of last week, Brisbane getting off to this good lead.
Happens again.
And then I think you mentioned in a group chat of, do they know if they get a lead, they're meant to hold it?
They use all their petrol tickets too early, I think, in the line sometimes.
It's incredible.
But, yeah.
And like I said last week, I genuinely think it has to be nothing less than mental for them now, because they were phenomenal in that first quarter. Fremantle could not touch them, and then they gave up 8 or 9 consecutive goals to go from
For the second week in a row.
up by 28 points to down by 28 points or something like that.
Yeah.
That's just got to be mental. It has to be. Then I don't know how they're going to overcome it now. Yes, that was a game over in Perth. Yes, that's lots of travel. But come on, you've just lost a flag by 5 points. You've got to have a bit more heart and drive than that. And I hate to be critical on them, but they are the best lined up. They have the best lineup in the competition on paper. It's not close.
100%.
So yes, they didn't have Lockie that day, but you should still be getting. Yeah, when you have a lead like that, what else can you really say? But the Dockers re-signed their coach during the week. Maybe there's something in that, and they were flat last year. They expected a lot more out of last year, and that's a team that in their home fortress that Optus is, and when your best mid's getting 46. And, even their young forwards like Amos and Tracy were looking very menacing. So I think they're a lot better than people might have thought going into the season.
I agree. I really do.
I think another team that has been really good and really started strong and people are starting to actually notice. No, I'm surprised you're not wearing any red and white here.
Saving it for the grand final, I think.
Exactly
this
that.
one, I even heard, usually when your team's doing well, you make sure you book September off. I've heard he's booking a holiday in September. He's
that confident. I'll just watch it from England, he reckons.
I can't confirm.
What do you think about the start from Sydney?
Seeming the injuries we currently have with some, 3 key players, I'm quite surprised. It's off the back of another mature age player in Isaac Heaney really stepping up, playing as a midfield bull.
Highest
Dominated
rated
the first
player
couple
for the
rounds.
second week in a row.
It's crazy. He's taking the game by storm at the moment. He's really dominating that midfield. If he stays there when the likes of Mills, Parker, and Taylor Adams come back, I
think
don't
he
know.
has to, doesn't he?
I think he does now. But
Yeah.
also a young guy that had a good season a couple of years ago, and that's Chad Warner. He looked unbelievable in the new TNs against the Pies on Friday night.
Rocking them well, yes. Did see that.
Lucky enough to be there live and watch him put on a clinic. 3 goals, 27 disposals. But, I mean, just the stepping up. I mean, Errol Goulden didn't have a good game, and I guess a lot of Swans supporters thought he would go close to winning the Charles Brownlow, but I still think he will. But it just proves that we have other players that can step up in big moments and really carry us to a win. And it was a midfield game. I mean, Logan McDonald kicked 4 of the cheapest goals I've ever seen in AFL football. But
Hey, you still called it, though.
I told you. 4 goals, could have had more, but yeah, I mean, it's a midfield game.
And that's the beauty, I reckon. I don't know what the exact coaching around it was, but the beauty of being able to swap your midfielders forward. And, you know, Heaney for the last number of years has been that forward pocket. He's had a little touches in the midfield, but the ability of Warner to be an option forward now, like not just sort of rest down there, like kick his goals, be a marking option, be a lead-up option. Like, obviously, when Adams and Parker come back, and Mills, like, they're all going to be able to go through there. And that's dangerous.
It's a good team.
And the reason to me that it's most dangerous is because you've got the perfect mix of young and experience. Because I think these days you actually want almost more young guys, because the way you guys play, the pressure you put on Collingwood, I haven't seen Collingwood that flustered in years. Every player, they couldn't get any of their ball movement going. They had no control on the ball when they had it. And that's because all 23 of the Swans players, Wixie come on at the end and did the same thing. All of them just went 100% at every single contest, and the pressure is insane. There's always 3 in your face. And then the skill level on top of that, when they're knackered, just flinging it around, it's like you literally think if they can keep this up, you cannot stop them.
I've got to give credit to a Collingwood player. I know how much you don't like this Collingwood player, but Nick Dacos did all he could for the Pies. That goal...
Yeah, 30 easy touches, yeah,
I
nice.
saw him marking it out, 60 metres out, and I've gone, he's going to kick this. You know, they've unveiled the premiership flag, he's up for it, and just absolutely roosts it through at goalpost height. And I know he had a lot of cheapies, I know he always does, but the way he uses the football, he carves teams apart, he's quick, he's dynamic. Sometimes hates a hard ball, which I know you like to talk about, Boxy, but he's still one of the best players in the league by far.
But it didn't really help the team. But I'm not going to go on about him for ages. But yeah, I think, yeah, he got a lot of the footy, and a lot of the Collingwood players did, but they were just under so much pressure. It didn't matter.
There's a player that I haven't mentioned and gets so underrated. There's James Rowbottom, 13 tackles against the Pies. That is absurd.
Love that.
That's pressure football.
Yeah, and he'd be the favourite teammate because he allows Errol to get on the outside. Like, stuff like that doesn't happen, and casuals don't know. They don't understand this. Like, you've got to have a guy like that. And for the Dogs, it's Libba. Like, you know, Jack Viney, the same thing. They get in under, go into every tackle, wanting to put them in the ground, and that sets up all your other midfielders. He doesn't have to have the best skills. He doesn't have to have the best tank, but he puts his body in, and he's really a big glue guy for you. But on the Saturday, my Hawks, now that we're talking about all our teams, I guess, not really heaps to talk about. Guinea debuted. It was good to watch him. I listened to a lot of this on SEN, and it was sort of good listening for a while. And then after behind, it sort of got a bit annoying. And then we got run over the top of, which I was expecting because we're a very young side. But I liked the way we played, but in the end, we fell by 24 points to the Bombers, who I'm not very convinced about. A few of the young guys played pretty well. Perkins, unfortunately, my boy Zach Reid got injured again, got subbed out. But they sounded and looked pretty good, the Bombers. They've got their season on track with a win.
Have you ever known a player to recover from glandular fever as fast as Dylan Moore?
Yeah, 3 goals after having affected. Glandular about a week ago. He's a pretty tough guy. It's good when the injury list gets a bit shorter and when Dylan can be out there. But, yeah, he was phenomenal. My boy Massimo D'Ambrosio was pretty good as well in the 16. Pretty heavy number to wear. But, yeah, couldn't get the job done there. Just quickly over the others, the Giants pretty easily took care of North, but it was a pretty good fight from the Kangaroos. They looked pretty good. Zane Dersma kicked a couple goals. Looked pretty nice, if you don't mind. But the Giants just keep going on. And, well, at the moment, they're pretty, well, without question, premiership favourites at the moment. They won that one by 39 points at home. Not quite as big of a crowd as when they played Collingwood the week before, but they got the job done.
Something in that.
And then I had the pleasure of being at the Cattery Woods to witness the Cats' 8-point win over your Saints.
I tried to just kind of quickly just sweep, move on, not have to inflict the memories of the pain of the down the highway trek that many Saints fans would have done.
There was a lot there, and let me tell you,
it was good to see on the TV.
It pains me to say this because I used to dislike him, but I've learned to love him now. But the Joel Selwood stand was remarkable. I love what they've done.
Jam-packed.
I went to the Cattery 2 years ago when it was starting to be built, and the atmosphere is still great because it's a bit of a skinnier stadium, so it sort of feels a bit more like a basketball stadium or a soccer stadium. You hear a lot more of the chants, or a lot closer. It stays in because the G's obviously a bit wider, so it's still great, but just a bit different in a nice way. That Selwood stand, I was in the standing room, which I love it. It's a great innovation. It's a little bit European football-like, and there was blokes, massive contingent of Geelong blokes, and the chants from start to finish of the game wouldn't stop every couple of minutes. It was great. Like, I loved it for footy, but then just the same, there was Saints chants. And I think the loudest chant of the whole game was actually a St Kilda chant from the other end. And that shocked me because we were in Geelong, but it was nuts loud. It got drowned out because there was more Cat supporters there. But that Saints chant was really strong, and rightfully so, because it was a close game from start to finish. I'm not going to say it was a pretty game, because that would be a lie. But
I think St Kilda games, under Ross Lyon,
it's very defensive.
You get used to, it's not going to be an entertaining game of football for a neutral, and it's not going to be a pretty game for a neutral. It's one of those things where it's just stressful because even like when we were up and about in the late 2000s, so 2009, 2010, we were winning games. We were winning some games really well, but there were other games where it'd just we put a stranglehold on the opposition and we've still got to score.
Yeah.
And I'm always fearful. Like, you see this, you hear... You see the slingshot. Commentators all the time are talking about the slingshot defense. And it's like, that's great, but we've still got to get the ball into the hands of the forward line to actually kick a goal.
A lot of the time in that game, the defensive strangle was so hard, and the Saints are genuinely really stringent defensively. Really impressed me because that Geelong forward line is pretty star-studded. They had pretty much everyone they wanted. Even young Ollie Dempsey was dominating. And they just couldn't score. They couldn't even get marks inside 50. So that was really impressive. And a lot of the Saints' goals actually came over the back when they had more numbers out the back than Geelong did, because Geelong were trying to score, pushing everyone in their forward line. A lot of the Saints' goals were sort of over the back when it was a 2-on-1 and 1-on-1 inside 50. I think, the first goal, I think Membry kicked was a great example of that, where it was just the ball just out the back. So... But if that's the only way you can really score, then I get your worry. A few times they found King on the lead. He was just a little bit inaccurate, which, like I said in the first episode, Woodsy, I want him to work on that. But anyway, it was a great game. And then those last 15 minutes was as exciting of a football game I've seen all year. Out of nowhere, the Cats looked home. I think they're up by 21 points. The Saints reeled it right back to take the lead. And when they took the lead, it was electric. And then Paddy Dangerfield marked the ball on the paint, and I genuinely sat there thinking he does not have this in him. And he ended up just sneaking it inside the left post for the win.
I'm just going to pull you up on that. I don't think we ever actually got the lead. I had to actually get the timeline. I think we were 2 points down, and it was 30. A minute 30 to play.
That's right. You tied it because I'm pretty sure you kicked. Well, either way, it was close.
But I think one of the biggest talking points, and you mentioned it throughout the opening round and round one, and I think this game really highlights it when you look at the scoreline. And I don't know if I'm going to throw to your next point, but 19,
you go for it.
30 combined score. 19-30.
Is that which game's that?
St Kilda Geelong.
Yeah.
10-16 to 9-14.
Look,
so
if you
tell me about what does that mean?
If anyone knows me, and we have a bit of a group chat where we talk a lot of sport and mostly footy when it's footy season. A lot of the time, I rehash the phrase, which I've come to love. It's become a bit of
put it on a t-shirt.
We should put it on an extra time t-shirt. it should be branded, because I do say it a lot, and I'm just going to have to just copy and paste by the end of the season, because it's become a bit of my personality. But it's bad kicking is bad football, Woods, and there is no truer statement in Aussie rules footy, if you ask me. It can be branded onto any team in the country, whatever the level, because it is never wrong. You might win games playing bad football, but it's still bad football if you're kicking the ball bad. So, before I say it too many times and go crazy, I've decided that I might as well make a little a mini seg out of it. So each week, I'm going to give a bad kicking is bad football award. A little bit like the reverse Coleman Award, or, Spud's Golden Fist on the bounce. I've got bad kicking is bad football, and we'll go to a team each week. And the first recipient, I should get a little graphic or a little trophy that I can hand to them each week. But the first one is Port Adelaide at home against the West Coast Eagles. They actually got the job done because, well, I guess West Coast just aren't quite up to it at the moment, and the Power are a top 4 side, but they actually won by 50 points. But they kicked 16 goals, 24.
Unbelievable.
Scoring a maximum, or scoring accurately, on just 40% of their shots. And they had 40 of them.
Crazy.
So, I mean, if you have 40 shots, you're probably going to win anyway. But that is bad football. Clip that. Bad kicking is bad football, Port Adelaide. You need to take notes. Get to training. Get in front of the big sticks. Don't care how long it takes you. You need to improve that this week. Ken, listen to me. Special mention goes to my Hawks, kicking 11-17, and obviously the Saints 9-14. The Cats probably throw them in as well. But thank you, Woodsy. Bad kicking is bad football. They're the nominees this week. Port Adelaide take it home, but I should give the Kangas a shout out because they played some good football. Yes, they lost.
8 straight.
Start of the game 8 straight. 13-4 they finished. Just sensational. I love seeing that.
Good
it makes me happy.
It's good football.
Makes me happy. Good
That
kicking
makes sense.
is good football. So that's the little mini seg, the first one. That's that for this week. And just going over the last few results, the Suns, well, they're 2-0 under Mr. Hardwick. A solitary goal is all they won by, and they really took everything the Crows had for them and got the job done in the wet.
Does
up
it
on
come
the
down
coast.
to the change of the goal song? Does that help them improve?
There's something in that, I reckon.
Because they've gone to 3 chimes of the famous goal song, and I think that could be why they should have done it earlier.
Can you give us a rendition for people that don't know?
Don't know how to do that one.
Well, make sure, if you want to know what we're talking about, make sure you watch the next Gold Coast game. And no doubtly you'll hear it because they will kick a goal. And it's a great chime, a little bit of their song. But on the Sunday, the D's hosted the Bulldogs in a pretty big match, a rematch of the 2021 Grand Final. And the D's ran out winners by 45 points, which I think for them, I heard it over the radio, it's just, for them, it's all they needed. They just needed one win, and now everything's behind them. They had a pretty big off-season for more reasons than one, and they just outclassed the Dogs, really. And I reckon we expected a bit more from the Bulldogs, and Bevo's just going to be more and more under pressure as he goes along. But
He'll be the first coach sacked.
yeah, well,
Put it in first.
Big
a
call.
lot of people are saying. And then in the afternoon, as I mentioned before, the Power got the job done by 50 points. And Flag Mantle is back under my boy wearing the number 3, Caleb Sarong. They got the job done over the Lions by 23 points. The Lions and the Pies both without a win in 2024.
their name's
And
Owen.
Woodsy, that will change this week, I guarantee.
I was going to be, you've been very vocal in a few chats that we're a part of on that and saying that after this weekend, Collingwood will be 1 and 2. I'm not going to say anything. I'll wait and see what happens. It is at the MCG, and a few promotions about it have all framed Collingwood as their army is going to be there to take on St Kilda.
It's their Lord and Saviour's 50th game. I'm not sure if you heard
Oh,
about it.
you don't want to
Who?
get my blood
Who?
boiling on this.
It's Nick
Who?
Dacos' 50th game. I'm not
Nick-
sure you
Nick
might
Dacos.
have heard it.
Nick Dacos?
It's Spud's game, and you haven't heard anything about it because 50 games. Get real, mate. Travis Boak played 350. You hadn't heard anything about that.
I know. And
He is a
50 games,
superstar, Travis Boak. He's been phenomenal for that football club. This kid's played 50 games. I could play 50 games if I had
So
2 good knees.
So you're
Spare
tipping
me.
Collingwood?
It's Spud's game, and that's what it is.
You're tipping Collingwood.
The Pies will win. Move on.
Well, there, move on. So round 2 this week. What is the biggest game you're looking forward to?
Well, mine would be GWS West Coast.
Well,
One V18.
I think that one for a different reason, and that is because GWS are the current AFL heavyweight champions. They beat Collingwood in the round one,
Which gave them the belt.
which gave them the belt. And then they faced North Melbourne, and now they're facing West Coast. And you're talking to me before.
But isn't that a little bit like John Cena sort of facing a child?
I was about to say, like, in wrestling terms, it's like the champion just, facing the easy jobber wins after the champion victory, making the title prestigious.
Obviously, the only difference there is the Giants couldn't pick who their next challenger was.
Exactly.
And to be honest, the little kid that is North Melbourne put up a pretty good fight. And the Giants didn't play
it's
the
the
way...
local enhancement talent in wrestling terms. North Melbourne and West Coast. Sorry to offend, and if they win, great work.
Well,
However,
to me, they continued to play the same way, so they haven't lost their form. And if they keep winning, you can only play who's in front of you. But I would argue that for me, we're not talking about the belt, we're talking about rankings. I think the Swans have to be number one the way they're playing the game. But the Giants obviously are clear too. A Sydney grand final would be pretty insane.
And if Sydney Swans win, it'd be even better.
You wouldn't be able to see it. Either way, I think, Carlton's up there as well. But in terms of games this weekend, there's some pretty good ones. Thursday night will be good, as we just mentioned, Spud's game. Crows and the Cats, I think, underrated this game.
Is that Adelaide Oval?
It is at Adelaide Oval. This is going to be huge because both of these teams have real strong thoughts on making that top 8. And I think this game is going to be a really early season definer. My Hawks got a pretty big test facing Melbourne. Swans and the Bombers. Well, if the Bombers are legit, they'll hopefully take it up to them, but I think that'll be pretty easy. Dogs and Suns in Ballarat, which is going to be an absolute belter as well. Can the Dogs get their season going, or the Suns 3-0 would be
3-0.
huge
you got to
story.
make sure you watch it to hear the what is it?
Well, they're playing
To hear
away.
the tingle,
They're
of
playing
course.
away.
To hear the
They're playing
jingle,
away.
yeah.
You have to wait
But I'll
another
tell you
week.
what.
Oh, bugger.
I don't think the Suns have ever been 3-0. I'm not sure they've ever been 2-0.
Well, I don't think too many of those guys would go too well with the Ballarat weather. It's
I
not
think they
usually
will.
warm.
It's
but
dimmable. It's dimmable. It's a real deal. The Suns could win the flag.
I got to give a big shout out though to some of the Gold Coast supporters, and especially in Victoria. I know that there's a group of active supporters who basically bring the energy at Marvel and the MCG, and hopefully they'll bring the energy to Ballarat. But it's always fascinating when St Kilda played Gold Coast. I think we went to it and we were up the end of the Gold Coast cheer squad, and we were just entertained by how many younger people there were, younger generations.
They all get around the Suns. It's
We
good
get
to see.
around the
Great club
sun,
to get
so
around.
good on them.
And you mentioned they can win the flag. Fish, I don't think you've been in yet to give your teams that can win the flag. So out of the 18, who can win the flag from here?
From here, everyone but West Coast.
Everyone but West Coast.
Technically, I guess, if I'm being honest, I don't think West Coast can win the flag. I don't think North can win the flag. I don't think that... I'm going to go on a massive call here. I don't think Geelong can win the flag. I don't think that Hawthorn can win the flag. And I don't think Richmond
So he's
can win the flag.
written off 5 teams. At the start of
I
the
don't
year,
mind
I asked you, and you only wrote off 1. Has that changed?
No, that has not changed.
So you still think 17 teams can, but 13 teams for you can.
It's interesting looking at the ladder after a round and 0.5, I guess. Because West Coast are locked at the bottom. They don't really like moving from there at the moment. But the bottom 4 has the Bulldogs, North Melbourne and Collingwood. So that's pretty good to see.
Can you say that again, sorry?
Collingwood, North Melbourne, the Bulldogs and the West Coast. are
Collingwood in the bottom 4.
So maybe Collingwood can't win the flag. No, I won't say that just yet. All you need to do is qualify according to Mr. McRae, and I reckon that's true. But that's most of our footy talk for this week, Woods. If you want my rankings, like I said before, I reckon I would go with Sydney, the Giants, and Carlton, and then I'd almost put Freo up there. But
I'm intrigued. Maybe next week, and I'll go after Anzac Day because that's a really good indicator. I reckon the first 5-6 rounds, you get them all out of the way, and then you can actually go, well, that's the first point where I think all the teams will be even then. So there'll be round 7. After round 7, let's go the rankings at that
It's
point.
way too early now.
Because I think, especially the teams that had opening round, you can't really... I don't think you can actually rate them at the same level. Like, is Geelong at the same level of GWS or Sydney because of, Sydney and GWS? They've played an extra game. Or Carlton. Where do you rate Carlton in relation to Geelong?
I should add, actually, as well, watching Jeremy Cameron's goal from right behind it. I was right behind that one in the stands. One of the best goals I've ever seen in my life. I reckon that will win goal of the year. So, congrats to Darty. I'll get around him. But, yeah, it's interesting with the rankings and extra buys. Brisbane and Carlton have the bye this week as they played in OR, or opening round. And then, obviously, the other two have to catch up on theirs in the Suns and the Giants and Collingwood and the like. So, like you said, Woods, it will take a little bit of time to sort of even itself all out. But something that has evened itself out and is almost up to conclusion is the NBL. Boys, I don't know if you've caught too much of it recently, but we are into the final series. There is four, well, hopefully two, but potentially 4 more games of Australian NBL basketball this year. And it is Melbourne United, my boys, well, they made it through, and the Tasmania Jack Jumpers, once again, they just continue to achieve in their short history.
I'm not a big NBL fan, but the way Woodsy was talking about South East, I thought they won the whole thing.
No, you see, I don't talk about them. I just don't ignore it. I mean, we're shit. We didn't finish in finals.
But you said they didn't even make finals.
They finished on the bottom.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
I haven't been, this is the thing. You
I had a few
haven't been
injuries.
listening.
It was a bit of a capitulation.
You haven't been listening to me because I haven't been speaking about them all year because there's nothing to talk about. I've absolutely fell asleep on the NBL. I don't know what's going on. I walked by a TV at work and it had the NBL finals on and I'm like, oh, Melbourne are up by about 10 or 20.
Well,
okay, that's all I know about this game. So you're going, I don't know if you watched it, but you'll have to actually
That's great
walk me through
promotion
it.
that you boys just fell asleep. Well, the Phoenix fell asleep at the wheel, if you want to know what happened to them. But either way, the other expansion team, Tassie, just phenomenal. In their few years, they just continue to buck the trend of expansion teams and achieve. And something that we probably could have touched on in the footy segment was that their AFL team has just been announced as well, which is pretty cool. 100,000 founding members already, so get around that. But their basketball team is just going great guns. They got rid of the Wildcats, but before that happened, right a few hours after we recorded last episode, I was lucky enough to watch my United and Shea Illy tear apart the Illawarra Hawks and march their way into the grand final series. And I was a little bit nervous. Like I said on the episode, I thought it genuinely could go to OT once again, like the first 2 games. It was just riveting. And it was a double header as well last Wednesday, which was just so good for a basketball fan. The coverage was elite as well. But, yeah, it's just that final game in John Cain Arena was going crazy. And the Hawks, led by Froling and the likes, gave everything they could. But in the end, I just want to highlight this man, Matt Dellavedova. I mean, he's just it's just really unheralded what he does. I know there's a lot of sports that are a lot more taxing, but for me, he's probably one of the fittest athletes I know because the bloke, like anyone, and I'm not saying I've ever done a drill or competed at professional basketball level or football level, but anyone that's done a drill where you have to go 100%, change direction, guard someone, chase someone around at 100% as fast as you can go for more than a minute, would have to know that if you watch this guy, he must be spent. Because this guy does not stop. The foot is down 100% of the time until the whistle goes. Every game he plays. He defends everyone at 100%. And then at the same time, he's got to facilitate the whole offense, which he does brilliantly as well. And he's just been an amazing inclusion for United. And he's just the man. He leads that team. And yeah, it brought me great happiness seeing him dominate and bring us into that grand final, along with Shea Illy, who I've mentioned before, Defensive Player of the Year, just someone who you can always know is just going to give it everything. And he's not that person that will dominate every single game, but in that final Game 3 deciding game, winner goes to the grand final series, he had everything. Yeah, who was massive, Shea Illy. He had 22 points and he dominated on both sides of the ball, and just the way he attacked the basket was phenomenal for me in that game. Really got my United boys over the line. And in the other match, it was Perth, and the Jack Jumpers, and the Jack Jumpers in heavy enemy territory that the Jungle is, got the job done, and they really just stymied Bryce Cotton, the MVP. They just didn't let him score. They made sure someone else beat them, and Jack McVeigh was phenomenal with 27, as he was for that whole series, leads them beautifully, and Doyle as well, Magnay, all scoring 18-24. And just, Milton Doyle has been phenomenal as well for them, but it just, to me, showed that as much as you like to say role players are really, really important, it's just your star players are just key. And for Perth, their star player got stopped. He still had a decent night. He still dropped 21 points, but they made the other Perth Wildcats players beat them. And that, in the end, was a perfect coaching style from Scott Roth, who's coached really well again for the Jack Jumpers. And this, Perth's inability to have anyone else take the game by the scruff of the neck outside of Bryce cost them in the end, and they fell to the Jack Jumpers. And boy, game one the other night was phenomenal. It was on Sunday, and it was absolutely bumping. It wasn't the greatest start from United, but I mentioned star players and how important they are, and what a place to stand up. Chris Goldingwoods, my coveted GOAT of Melbourne basketball, well, he was phenomenal, and it was really expected. 104-81 win to United, just clinical from Chris, 22 points, jacked in a couple threes that were just absurd, like contested deep threes. And alongside Joe Luala-Chul Jr., the big man in the middle, who dropped 20 and 11 rebounds, just the star players were just too much for Tassie. And they were rolling out the same sets that they were rolling against Perth, and they looked pretty good offensively themselves, but they just could not go with United once they started getting their defensive game back. And the star players rode them all the way to victory. And I cannot wait for Game 2 this Friday. Jack Jumpers United, first to 3, wins the championship. Hopefully my boys can get that done. That's on Friday night in Tassie, and that is decent enemy territory as well. They'll be trying to defend their little island, as Vickerman likes to call it. I like that bit of spice in it as well. But make sure you watch that. And then Game 3 will be back in Melbourne on Sunday, and we'll be here to cover it again next Wednesday. But that's basketball for this week. Make sure you catch Games 2 and 3 this Friday and Sunday. But for now, we're going to have to say goodbye to our great friend Noel Fisher. Thanks heaps for coming in, mate. It's a lot better when I don't just have to talk to the old fella, and it's good to see your pretty face as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, boys. It's always good to talk to you boys about random football trivia or opinion-based stuff as we had,
I'll have to make another one for you.
I think so. But it's always a pleasure to chat to you boys about all things sport.
We've had to get rid of my good friend Noel Fisher, but there's no reason to be sad because it's time for my favourite segment, Aussies Around the Grounds. And we'll start, as we always do, with this week's Weekly Wonder, which is a bit of a follow-up to something we've discussed on the show recently. Obviously, if you watched a couple episodes ago, we were talking about Elise Perry and her massive 6 in the women's IPL that actually went straight through the side window of the car they were looking to give away. I'm not sure why the car was so close to the boundary line. They probably weren't familiar with Elise's game, but Pez just thought, I'll just whack this on drive up in the air over the boundary for 6, straight into the car. And as you can see here, the Weekly Wonder is they were, I guess, happy and cheerful enough that they actually gave her the car window as a trophy, and I absolutely love that. She's loving it as well, so it's pretty funny to see, Woods.
Oh, definitely. I remember watching it and thinking back in the day of I mentioned the Mercantile Mutual and I think it was ING or the one-day domestic cups and how they celebrated the 6s that hit the signs and the sponsorships, but it's glad to see that they're at least making some light humour out of it, especially because of car windscreen. I don't know how much is to replace, or a car. Sorry, it was a back window, wasn't it?
Yeah, one of the main windows of the car. But
yeah, but I mean, it's
makes for a pretty unique trophy.
Should be held in the living room or just something to be a conversational starter. I mean, not many people have it, and I dare say, even at talking about earlier local sport and whatnot, I think usually if you hit the window of a car or a house, the owners don't present you with a framed.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it, and it's good to see that this could, who knows, be the start of something. But I'd love to see a follow-up on this. If anybody has ever hit the windscreen of a car or broken a window, let us know if you got that framed by the owners.
Yeah, I think Pez would probably be the only one with a smashed car window trophy, but it won't be out of place because I'm sure she has a lot around the place. She's an absolute superstar, and she's been dominating the women's IPL as well. But that's my weekly wonder for this week. Usually now I go into some sort of NFL yap, but at the moment I would either be talking for 2 days about all the free agency signings or not at all. So I'm going to choose to not bore you, and I'll do a massive NFL off-season recap after the draft and when the preseason begins. But basically, as most US sports are, there's been a whole lot of movement, and it's very hard to keep up, especially for someone who's a big fan and a fantasy player like I am. It's going to have to take a lot of study when I get time to do that. But most of the Aussies are in the same place. Cam Jono's gone to Pittsburgh to punt over there, and we're awaiting, obviously, Tory Taylor, who hopefully will get drafted to one NFL team to punt for them. But instead, I'm going to go over a quick recap of the Aussies in the NBA because we have a couple of them at the moment. So I'm just going to recap their stats. Obviously, this one is telling me that Kyrie Irving is Australian. Obviously, he's born here, but he's American, but he's playing quite well. Insane game winner the other night for Dallas. Josh Giddey and the Oklahoma City Thunder, as I said last week, sitting quite close to, or if not the top of the West. They haven't really dropped outside the top 3 seeds in the Western Conference all year for a pretty young team with this whole lot of draft picks still. He's playing well, averaging just under 12 points a game, 6 rebounds and 4 assists. Diop Reith, my boy, who signed on this season for the Portland Trailblazers midway through the year, is averaging 9 points and just under 4 rebounds, which is pretty good for someone who got signed, off the couch halfway through the year. Not off the couch, he was playing a lot of lower basketball, but it's great to see Diop playing in the league. He deserves it, and he's been so crucial for the Boomers for so long as well. Dante Exum, and it is a really, really happy story because he's had so many injuries that really threatened to derail his career. He's gone over to Europe, and he's really come back with a bit of a fire, and he's been really important for Dallas himself, alongside Kyrie Irving and the superstar Luka Doncic, and he's averaging 8 points a game, which is great for Dante. He was a real superstar and a real prodigy as a junior. And another in Dallas, it seems that a lot of these guys are just Mavs at the moment, Woods, and that is Josh Green. He's also averaging 8 points. A lot of these guys haven't played every game, and someone who hasn't played many games at all, unfortunately, the story just keeps getting a little bit more sad. His big Benny Simmons, another back injury for him, has seen him only play 15 games and average 6.7 rebounds and 5 assists, but yeah, another serious back injury for Benny has put him out again for, I think, the rest of the season. So hopefully he can recover and get back for next season and really show everyone which is a lot of people who are doubting him, that he wasn't, an overlooked guy or a bad decision of a pick or a trade in recent history. But someone else, Dyson Daniels, who I really love, and his little brother's actually up and coming as well. I think his name's Dash. Out of Bendigo, he plays for the Pelicans, obviously, and he's coming off the bench for 5 points a game. Matisse Thybulle, he's in Portland with Diop, and he's averaging 5 points a game as well. And Jingle and Joey Ingles, we cannot forget about Big Joe. He's over being a bit of an old head, being a bit of a coach on the court for the Orlando Magic, who have got a very young squad, but they're very exciting behind Paolo Banchero, who's a former number 1 pick, and he's playing very well, and the Wagner brothers as well. But Joe's just putting in about 4 points a game, but a lot of leadership, a lot of high fives, and a lot of good vibes for Big Joe, and a few highlights to go with it. He had a nice layup I saw the other day on Victor Wembanyama, who, if you know anything about, world sport, you'd know about Big Victor. Big 7'4" Victor, and Joe just took him on at his leisurely pace and just laid it in over the top of him. So that was good to see Joey still loving his basketball. Someone else who's loving their basketball is Big Jock Landale in Houston. And I think today he had a pretty big number of blocks, the big man. So moved to Houston this season, and he's doing all right. 3 points a game off the bench over there. Obviously getting a few more minutes at the moment with their high draft pick and young star Alfred Sengun going down with an injury. And the main man, the Aussie hero Paddy Mills, now in Miami in the number 88 He's had a bit of an up and down season, starting with Atlanta and not getting too many minutes, but he's averaging 3 points a game, and hopefully he can go with Miami and they can go on one of those fairy tale runs where they're not quite good through the season, then all of a sudden they just come good, and Jimmy Butler, his teammate, goes out and becomes, well, Michael Jordan 2.0. But that's Aussies in the NBA this week. Just a bit of a recap. We haven't done one in a while, but all the best to all of those lads. Hopefully we see a few of them in the playoffs. But it's great to see a long list of Australians in the NBA. And we'll check up on that in a few episodes' time. But something that cannot wait a few episodes, Woods, is the Australian Grand Prix. And I mentioned off the top of the show, it is this weekend, and I cannot wait. I cannot believe it is finally this weekend. It's been a whole year since last year when I absolutely loved it. It was an electric qualifying, a bit of a wet qualifying, and then a beautiful day on the Sunday where there was absolute chaos. But my boy Max Verstappen won under the safety car because of the chaos that happened at the end. I'm a little bit disappointed because I don't think they're letting you on the track after now because of what happened last year.
I actually heard on the radio coming in today that it is not going to happen this year, and they're going to explore options for years to come. But
it's just because last year, if you didn't see, obviously these cars go around at crazy, mind-numbing speed around the track, and there was a bit of a stack towards the end with about 2 or 3 laps to go, and they actually red flagged in the end, I think. So that means basically the cars come back in, or they stop, and they stopped on the grid, and they had to restart because the car had to be cleaned off the track. And then at the restart, with about 1.5 laps to go, 2 laps to go, there was just carnage. There was a crash at the first corner, and then there was a crash at the second corner between the 2 Alpines for the same team, crashed into each other. And then there was a crash further down, and it was just absolute chaos, another safety car, and then that's all she wrote. But what usually happens at most Grand Prix, especially the ones around tracks with big crowds, a bit of a tradition is basically once the race is finished and the cars have done their sort of cool-down lap, everyone can storm the track and go around to where the podium is and watch the podium celebrations. It provides a great atmosphere. But unfortunately, a lot of the Aussies last year got a bit keen, and there were still cars, still drivers on the track that had crashed. There's still cars going around in their, warm-down lap, which a lot of them still do at, upwards of 100 clicks to warm, cool down the tyres or, whatever they're doing, sort of talk on the radio, celebrate, get the cars back in. They're still going quite fast. It's very dangerous, and some people decided to just jump the barrier and they started running on the track, which is obviously a massive safety issue. So this year that won't be happening, which is disappointing for, rule followers like myself, I guess, who really like to go around to the podium and watch Max soak in the victory. But hopefully I'll still be doing that just from the big screen. But Max, I hope they still follow you. I hope they just see your rear wing for the whole of this weekend once again, and you can get your 10th in a row. But as you can see on screen, we've got 2 Aussies, or 3 if you count Valtteri Bottas, who's an honorary Australian.
Will you be dirty if Piastri or Ricciardo take the honours over your man Verstappen?
No, I can't be because they're Aussies, but I really don't see Danny doing it off recent form. I think Oscar's a genuine chance, but I just think, yeah. In short, the Red Bull and Max just provides a very, very tough task. I think unless someone, crashes into him or something happens with the car, it's pretty inevitable, like everyone would probably expect, but I don't want to put a jinx on it. He does have the championship. He does have 9 in a row. It'd be nice if he gets 10. But hey, if Oscar can win in front of his home fans and his family, which would only live pretty close.
15 minutes away from the track, I hear. 15
minutes away. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's a Brighton fella. So that'd be phenomenal. And there is going to be a lot of orange, or papaya, as they say, around Albert Park Circuit this weekend. And a lot of, RB blue, I guess, for Danny Rick, and a few mullets going around for Valtteri as well. But hopefully the Aussies can get inside the top 10 and either Oscar or Max can win. That'll be the best for me. But make sure you catch that this weekend. Footy's back on Thursday night. Woodsy's Saints will be taking on the Pies from 7:30. Game 2 of the NBL Grand Final Series on Friday night down in Tassie. Make sure you get that as well. And of course, the Australian Grand Prix from about 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. But until then, make sure you take in all of that sport, and we'll be here to digest it then. Take care.